corn. Hello, my name is Bianca Labrador, and I'm in HA 347, so a mix of East Asia. The article that I read was chapter 6 from Inside Japanese Ceramics, a primer of materials, techniques, and traditions by Richard L. Wilson. Richard L. Wilson is a Japanese art historian. He's a professor at the International Christian University, and he has also been a professor at Rice University. He has written several books and articles about Japanese ceramics. And one of the pages that I read about him, they said that he was one of the top historians about in regards to Japanese ceramics. Not only is he an academic who studies Japanese ceramics, he himself is also a working potter. So he has a hands-on knowledge as well as an academic knowledge. Like I said, the chapter that I read was from the book Inside Japanese Ceramics, which was really a primer and a guide for potters so they could go through and learn how to, not only how Japanese ceramics used to be made, but also how they could go through and take elements and utilize them today. So they're ancient techniques and how they can be adapted for modern use. So his methodology, he used many images, including a mixture of diagrams as exhibited on the right, as well as actual photographs of Japanese techniques. He took the reader on a journey through the evolution of kilns, starting briefly on mainland Asia, and explained how the Japanese kilns differed from Korean or Chinese, and then led us through an evolution of the kilns and different techniques used. So it was a mixture of history lesson with practical information, because he would also talk about how certain techniques could be used today. The different terminology that I noticed during the reading was red heat, 750 to 800 degrees centigrade. And it takes 5 to 6 hours to reach red hot in the small earthenware kilns. And then there's ash glaze, and those are glazes made from various kinds of ash from burned items, such as, if you were to burn firewood and you take that ash and mix it, you could create a glaze. Then there was split bamboo style, which is a kind of climbing kiln. Rifle and snake kilns are both a kind of split bamboo style kiln. We've in class, we've discussed dragon kilns. This is similar to that. Then there was anagama style kilns, and those are a style of sloping or climbing kiln that are generally long, or if they're made today, they're either long and narrow, or they have a bulging chamber. Another term that he used was draw test. And a draw test is where you check the temperature, the maturity of the kiln inside, and you take a small perforated piece that's set on the shelf or staggered near a spy hole. And then the worker would take it out, submerge it in water, and it would cool it quickly, and you're supposed to judge the temperature. However, Dr. Wilson stated that's not reliable because of the quick cooling of the piece. So the main message of the article was the ways the ceramics in Japan used to be made, and then how similar techniques are used today. There were several different iterations of kilns used throughout Japan's history. For example, you had the low fire kilns, which they did glazed earthenware and enamel, and they would use a muffle to protect the wares inside. And then you had the sloping / anagama kilns, and then it led into the split bamboo and rifle snake kilns. And the benefit of these style kilns right here would be they fire more quickly. Then Dr. Wilson explained how ancient style kilns can be used today. And he said when they're used today, they're more in a bulging shape like this one, if you see here. And they're above ground, they're not buried into the ground. And if you look at this illustration, or not illustration, this photograph, you'll see all the firewood that's around that is used as the fuel for that kiln. He mentioned, however, that even though people do utilize this style today, they aren't as popular because fossil fuel kilns are a little bit easier to control and to use. However, there was a revival, he explained, since the 1970s. Now, this article was written, I believe, in the 90s or early 2000s, so it may have changed since then. But he said that there was a revival in using these style kilns because of the way the final product would look once they'd come out. They really liked the way it was designed. Okay. Next, Dr. Wilson explained kiln loading and the importance of it. So first, kilns would be loaded during the daytime, and depending on the kiln and type of wares is how the kiln would be stacked. Placement of the items within the kiln does affect the final product as well. And they would use saggers and setting tools to protect the pieces. When the pieces fire high, they can become stuck to each other or the place that they're set upon. And so some potters would use sand or high silica rice chaff to keep their wares from sticking inside the kiln, and it would help protect them. And another point that he brought up was the importance of experience when stacking the kiln, because if somebody doesn't have a lot of experience, they could stack it wrong, and it would increase the risk of loss of pieces. The next point that he brought up was kiln firing, the importance of kiln fuel. Depending on what type of wood you use would affect how quickly or how high the temperature could get inside the kiln. So for example, he stated that soft woods like cedar, pine, and cypress, specifically in that order, he stated, are the best. Rotted and bug-infested woods don't work as well. So you want to make sure that you have a high quality soft wood that hasn't been destroyed by pests. And there are two stages of firing the kiln. The first stage, well, technically the first stage is stacking the kiln. And then next you have two more stages, which is the firebox stoking. And that is done at nighttime after the kiln has been loaded. And firebox stoking helps to draw out the moisture from within the kiln. And then the next step is to do chamber stoking. And that brings the wares to maturity and starts after the second or third chamber have gotten to red heat. And timing is extremely crucial during this part, because if it takes too long to do certain things, the temperature can go down, and that can affect how well things are done. Next, we have kiln schedules. So potters used to coordinate the clays and decorations they would do, as well as the glazes, so they could load the kiln to achieve the certain effects that they wanted. But now, because different wares require different fire temperatures, so you'd want to make sure that you're not wasting space in a kiln and more people can utilize it as well. But the fossil fuel kilns have actually reduced the need for people to coordinate as much as they used to. And then you need to coordinate the cooling of the kiln. That's extremely important, because certain glazes require the kiln to drop in temperature at a certain amount of time. For example, celadons use quick cooling, and quick cooling is letting the kiln lower in temperature at least as fast as it heated up. So celadons and clear glazes utilize that quick cooling the most. I thought that Dr. Wilson's article was really well thought out. I appreciated the numerous diagrams that he had in there. I thought it was really nice to see the photographs, especially you saw the photograph of the kiln stacking, and then you saw the photograph of the woman or the person stoking the fire within the kiln. It was really neat to actually see that, as well as seeing a modern split bamboo style kiln. That was extremely informational. His His visual aids were fantastic. So I wasn't left going, what do saggers look like? What do the setting tools look like? What does he mean by uh, a rifle kiln? What does he mean by split bamboo? I was able to see those right there in front of me. Since it was written for a book, he didn't have citations, though I have seen it several books that actually do have footnotes as you're reading them. So it would have been nice to see some of those footnotes. So that way I could have gone through and verified. For example, when he says that there's been a revival in the use of the anagama style kilns, it would have been nice to be able to say, well, where did he pull that from? Where is there an article or a study that says that more people are using this style kiln now, that there is that revival? Or is that just his personal experience as a potter and being immersed in that community and talking to others who are also involved in that community? Another claim that he made was when he said that most wood burning kilns are made from refractory brick today. Okay, well, how do you know that? Where do you draw that from? Is there actually a study that's been done to say that? Has there been a survey? Or again, is it just your personal experience and you're making those generalizations? But again, like I said, it was written for potters. So the majority of people reading this would probably already know whether or not that's popular within the field. I did like how he had said, like, hey, if you're going to try and make an anagama style kiln, you can. They're above ground. This is the wood that you'd use. And he had illustrations of how they looked. And I really appreciated that. So overall, I really liked his article. You can tell that he really does know what he's talking about. He does approach it as a potter as well as an academic. So you kind of get, it's an easy to read article that is full of a lot of historical information as well as a lot of information that's relevant today. All right, thank you. I hope you have a great day. That is the end of my presentation. Oh, if you're interested, here on the bibliography, here's actually an interview with Dr. Wilson. And it was actually, I believe that's the one that's about the book. He was actually interviewed for the book Inside Japanese Ceramics. All right, there we go.